All right, welcome Kiss Army to episode 28 of the Kiss Army Things podcast. You're with Xander
and Jeb.
Thank you for joining us, Kiss Army. We really appreciate it. Now, so a couple episodes ago, Jeb and I, we dove right in talking about Is Rock Dead? We knew that it was going to be a lengthy topic. We knew we'd be right back here discussing it, but we're going to need some help. So joining us today from the Kiss Army Nation podcast, we have with us both hosts of the Kiss Army Nation podcast, Pasquale and Claudio. Gentlemen, how are we doing?
Good. Really good. Thank you.
Awesome. Well, hey, thank you guys so much for joining us. I think it's going to be a great episode talking about Kiss, talking about rock and roll. So before we get too deep into everything, we want to start out with the Kiss Spotlight. So Jeb, you want to talk about the Kiss Spotlight and what we do and why we do it?
Oh, absolutely. The Kiss Spotlight, of course, is whatever album or show or whatever piece of Kiss media that we've been enjoying since the last episode. And so I believe mine is actually still carrying on with Donington 1996, the Off the Soundboard.
Makes sense.
It just really hasn't left my car stereo. Part of that's because of laziness, but also because I genuinely enjoy listening to it. And so I feel like I'm cheating a little bit, but you know, there's been a lot going on. So I've been perfectly content with the Off the Soundboard Donington 1996. It's just great all the way through. I dig it.
For sure. Well, I'll tell you what, let's go to Claudio and then we'll do Pasquale before hitting me last. So Claudio, what Kiss album you been listening to the most or most recently?
Well, look, it's I'm with Jeb. I've been digging, big time Donington 96. And in my case, I kind of revisited all of the Soundboard releases. I hadn't paid too much attention to Tokyo, so then I kind of revisited it, and then I pushed. I went to the limit to see if I could dig, Virginia Beach, but no, it's not working, man. I don't know what's happening, but I really love Donington big time, and that's my preferred so far, and then followed by Tokyo. But Virginia Beach, my friend, no, it's ain't gonna take it. No,
yeah,
no.
It should have been a good one. I think that Virginia Beach, it should have been a good one, and it just didn't deliver, unfortunately.
No, the sound quality, as you guys were saying in some of the previous episodes, it's not there. I don't know what happened. It's incredible.
Yeah, who knows what happened? Hopefully, so what do you think about the next one, which is
I'm so excited. I can't
77.
wait. I can't wait. This is what I wanted. I'm a fan of all lineups, but to me, the original lineup, it's unbeatable, and that's what I was hoping, to get one of the soundboard from the 70s. So I'm quite excited.
Absolutely, yeah, me too. All right, Pasquale. So what have you been jamming to lately?
Well, at the time of this recording, today is June 30th. And we all know what June 30th is, right? The 45th anniversary of Love Gun.
Love Gun.
So guess what I've been listening to?
Nice.
Makes perfect sense.
And I also bought the KOL version, the gold record.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I saw that.
Yeah, at a fairly good price, especially even in Canadian dollars. But I couldn't justify buying the picture disc at $185. That's close to the same price as the box set. So no, I couldn't do it. But what's interesting about Love Gun is I've heard these songs 1,000 times, and I've heard them live, and I've heard them on various compilation albums. But there's something about listening to that music on the original album that just brings back memories for me, And listening to Love Gun, I just remember, sitting back and looking at the cover for hours on end and being so taken in by the mystique and the look of the band. And I loved Gene's voice on this album. He just sounds so menacing, and one of my favorite songs on the album, one a great opener, I Stole Your Love, So I've been playing it over and over and over again, especially today. And we've been anticipating a new release of a new vinyl, and we all knew it was going to be Love Gun today. So in anticipation of that, I've been listening to the album a lot, and you know what? I'm still enjoying it like it's the first time.
Absolutely,
that's great.
I think it has that distinctive Kiss sound that Eddie Kramer he could only get from them. When he was even in the demos, before the first album, and then the sound that he achieved, with both Love Gun and Rock and Roll Over. I think he was the one who got the most out of the four members of the band. He was getting along great with Ace and Peter, and to me that's the Kiss sound. I don't know if you guys agree, but it is Kiss.
I've said it before, but I don't know if I stole this from someone else, but I think Eddie Kramer made Kiss sound like Kiss, or how they should have sounded. I was going to say Rock and Roll Over, Love Gun, and I believe he did Ace's album too, didn't he?
Yeah,
Did he
he
do
did.
album?
Yep.
There's a reason why that one
And
sounds
Alive,
amazing.
Claudio's right. He did Alive.
Exactly. I'm like,
And he produced the demos.
Yeah.
Early demos.
The early, yes, I was going to say. So Eddie Kramer, totally delivers.
Well, those demos actually sound even better than the release of the first album.
I've said that too. They sound more raw, more like Kiss.
Yeah.
Those first three records are great, but sound-wise, it doesn't capture like Rock and Roll Over and Destroyer or Love Gun.
But could you imagine those songs, which everyone, the first album is one of my favorite Kiss albums ever, but could you imagine how different even just the guitars would have sounded if they had Eddie Kramer officially producing? I think it would have beefed it up a little bit and made the the songs have more edge. I think, I still love the first album, but I wish Eddie Kramer had been there.
Oh yeah. That first record could have been like seriously heavy.
Oh yeah.
I mean, it's still great. I don't want to change anything, but just thinking about, what could have been, maybe it could have been a little bit heavier.
Yeah, maybe Eddie was too expensive at that time.
True, probably
for a brand new band.
Yeah, for Kiss working on a budget, no doubt. Yeah, it's funny actually. Right up until Pasquale joined the meeting, we were listening to Love Gun as well, and then so I'm gonna have to finish that album as soon as this is over. So maybe if we filmed tomorrow, Love Gun would have been my spotlight, and then yesterday, if we would have filmed Donington, would have been my spotlight. But actually, technically, the most recent Kiss album I listened to was Kiss Alive 3. So today on my way to work and on the way home, I had Kiss Alive 3. I bought a new CD and of Kiss Alive 3, popped it in, and I've been listening to that. And I think that's still one of my favorite live Kiss albums, just because, I don't know, the way those songs sound, they were played so well. And I love the set list, the different, variety of songs. Watching You and I Just Wanna, songs from the 70s all the way to the 90s. I just love Kiss Alive 3. But I'm gonna have to definitely go back and jam Love Gun and finish that after we finish recording. But so now that we've all kind of shared our Kiss spotlights and we're all warmed up, we can now dive into the topic, because I know it's a pretty interesting topic. And we started out just honestly talking about the question, is rock dead? Do you agree with that? / how do you interpret that? And so we'll start with Pasquale. Pasquale, when you hear the statement, is rock dead, is that something you cringe at? Is that something that you want to rally behind? Or is that something you want to like, okay, how do you even interpret that? So what's your immediate response to that question?
Oh boy, do you want the rocker's answer or the teacher's answer?
Ooh.
Rocker first, teacher after.
Rocker first, teacher,
Okay, rocker first. No, rock is not dead. Rock will never die. Rock cannot die. And what exactly does that mean? Rock is dead. Does that mean now that no one is listening to rock music anymore? Jeb made a good point in the last episode when he said, how do you define dead? Isn't dead non-existent? Rock is very much existent. Maybe there's no new rock music coming out, which there is, by the way. But people are still listening to rock. And being a teacher, I work with high school kids, and they're still listening to rock music. They listen to 80s and 70s rock music all the time. And they know the music. So there's another generation of fans who are listening to rock. So how can you argue that rock is dead?
Yeah, for sure. No, for sure. So that was the rocker answer. What's the teacher answer?
The teacher answer is the complete generalization of that term. First of all, how do you define rock? And then how do you define dead? And how do you define the idea that rock is dead? So what is rock? In my opinion, rock it's not something that you can see. It's something that you can feel. Rock is an attitude. It's a mission statement. rock and roll all night and party every day. It's a definition of what rock and roll is. And that mission statement will never die. Now, how it's interpreted, live life to the fullest, live by your own terms. How that is interpreted depends on a particular generation. But just because it's interpreted differently, it doesn't mean that it's dead. It just means that it has evolved for a new generation. And again, the word dead, it means non-existent. No, it's very much existing and continues to exist. And new music, it continues to be created. New rock music continues to be created. Now, we might get into this later in terms of why Gene Simmons says that. That's a whole different ballgame.
Yeah, for sure. So you're saying that, rock is definitely not dead, but do you think that maybe rock is dying in the sense that it's not, what the mainstream really focuses on? You mentioned your students listening to 70s and 80s rock. Are they listening to 2020s rock, 2010s rock? Are they looking towards the future? Because it seems like the rock music we have is mostly those 70s and 80s bands that are still here and still playing. But as far as maybe the future of rock, do you see rock as, dying possibly, or how do you look at that?
But those kids are the future of rock. And regardless of what rock they listen to, as long as they listen to rock, rock will continue to exist. Does it have to be necessarily mainstream rock, like today's rock, for rock to continue? No, it doesn't. As long as the mission statement and the attitude continues to be expressed through music, rock will never die. As long as there are kids who continue that tradition, it's never going to die. It's going to evolve, and how it's going to evolve, again, it's a matter of the generation, the kids who are listening. But it's impossible. It cannot possibly die. It cannot.
It's hard to say rock is dead when you have kids on YouTube who are literally better at playing drums than I am, and I've been playing drums for over a decade. You got kids who can play Slipknot songs, and they're amazing at guitar. And
Guitar is as big now as it ever was.
The guitar,
I play guitar, and I keep pay attention to a lot of the guitar communities online, and guitar is huge on Instagram and YouTube, and it's its kind of own thing, which kind of ties into rock, because it's a lot of metal virtuoso players, but in a way it's sort of tying into hopefully the perpetuation of rock.
Yeah, for sure.
Or at least has something to do with it.
Well, let's jump over to Claudio and get Claudio's thoughts. So Claudio, what are your thoughts on the whole "is rock dead"? I mean, do you have any different interpretations of rock, or variations of whether it's dead or dying? What do you think?
Well, not at all. I don't think it's dead. I don't even think that it's dying at all. To me, it's just the opposite. I see a big comeback of rock these days. And I want to point out what you guys were discussing on episode 26. What's the meaning of dead? What's the meaning of rock, as Bas was saying also. And, we could be talking about this for hours and hours, because, what's rock? It's just the type of music. It's a way of life. And to me, the pandemic showed me that as soon as things started to open up again, people were dying to go to shows. People were dying to get together, to have fun, to have that energy that only comes from rock shows, and rock events. So I think that later on we will get into what Gene meant by rock is dead. Of course, he's always been controversial, and he always liked to shake the tree and make people talk about him. I don't know if he really believes that, but to me, I can tell you, from my experience. So I listen to a lot of music, not only rock, mainly rock, but I also listen to pop. There's all kinds of music at home, and both my daughter and my son, without me pushing them to the extreme, they went into playing bass, learning from YouTube. They went to learning guitar also from YouTube, and they're playing rock, okay? And I'm not telling them, hey, let's put Love Gun and then let's try to get this lead or blah, blah, blah. That's what attracts them the most. Now, classic rock, 70s, 80s, today's, I don't know, because you also touched on this in the other episode. Now we can say that Maroon 5 is rock. Some people, they're going to say that it's pop. Eminem, you were talking about that. He was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, which is a complete different subject. But, I think we cannot draw a line on what's rock and what's not. Today, it's kind of a little bit of confusion around the genres of music. But
I agree with that.
I definitely, I don't think it's dead, not even close, and it's not dying either. I don't know. I think that answers the question, but to me, I remember when I got Gene's statement, I thought to myself, oh, here we go again. It's just like, okay, he's shaking the tree and he's gonna make people talk and blah, blah, blah. Now, maybe we're gonna talk about later, but the rock business, that's a different story.
Right.
Okay, rock business is not dead, but at the same time, it's not strong. Not so long ago, we had a discussion in our group with Pasquale and some friends, and we were talking about this, okay?
Mhm.
And what's the role of record companies today? How are they making money? Are they making money through selling albums? Are they making money through, live shows? But I'm sure that we're going to touch on that later on.
Well, I certainly hope so, because I wasn't even thinking about that, but I definitely want to either get your thoughts on that or definitely check out that episode. And you did bring up a good point about the confusion with music today, whereas, maybe 40 years ago, it was easier to determine, well, this sounds like rock, this sounds like this. And nowadays, it's almost like everything is sort of like, becoming fusion, where it's like you have a little bit of this mixed with a little bit of that. And that does kind of, like you said, blur the lines as far as what is and what isn't rock.
Yeah.
I do agree with that.
I think that it's also related, and I'm sure that Pasquale, he will agree with me, being a teacher and the way we're living these days, it's so different. So in the 70s, in the 80s, you basically listened to the whole album at home, okay? So you were listening to every single song, and then you became a fan of a band and blah, blah. Today, everything goes so fast that, you don't even listen to a complete song. The kids today, they're jumping, from one song to the other, from one artist to the other. They like one song from X and another song from Z. And that's why maybe the original concept of rock being, fan of Zeppelin, AC/DC, Kiss, Aerosmith, Queen, maybe that doesn't exist anymore, okay? Because, people is jumping from one place to the other. But that's the pace that we're living in. So it happens with TV. You don't. Sometimes you don't. That's why people are getting into Netflix series, because they want to kind of continue with something. If you watch normal TV, you're zapping all the time.
Mm. Yeah, that's very true. Do you have anything to add?
No, I was going to say, things you both touched on, and what we touched on in the last episode we did on it, about the defining of the terms or the lack thereof, really speaks to at least my frustration about the statement itself, rock is dead.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Because without a defining of the terms or any explanation, the statement becomes entirely useless, and it serves to only divide and create conflict, because it's, as soon as it left Gene's mouth the first time, which was years ago, and it just recently sort of resurfaced, once I got out there in the world, it just created it was just out of anyone's hands. And everyone's talking about Gene and talking about, the Kiss got put in the spotlight in a bad way. And I find myself rejecting the question outright because of how useless it is. Rock is dead. Well, what is rock? What is dead? Blah, blah, blah. It's an interesting conversation, but when Gene says it, it's really just sort of, why?
Yeah.
I think I know why, but
well, I was gonna say, we can move into the why now, because it almost seems like I don't know that I believe that Gene believes that.
Exactly.
I think Gene is intentionally, as it were, shaking the tree to create the conversation so that people like us will sit around and talk about rock and roll, literally keeping rock and roll alive, talking about how much we love rock and roll. So it almost seems like Gene is, you know, almost like one step ahead, where he's just being Gene, yeah, kind of flying off of the mouth, but he's also trying to create the discussion, because ever since he said that, I mean, Alice Cooper has jumped in, and Dee Snider has jumped in, all these people have jumped in. And yeah, like you said, I mean, the byproduct of that is that Kiss gets put in a bad spotlight. That's always a repercussion of anything that Gene says. But it does seem like Gene's almost intentionally, you know, pushing his hot button just to get people riled up. Do you guys agree with that? Do you disagree with that? Or why do you think Gene is hammering this point in so much in the media?
Wally,
we'll start with you.
I honestly believe that Gene believes what he's saying.
You do think? Okay.
I do think he believes what he's saying, because of the simple fact, money.
Mm-hmm.
Money. When he says rock is dead and we're killing it, the fans are killing it, what he's saying is, I'm not making money from you.
Yeah.
That's essentially what he's saying. And Claudio made a good point. The way we listen to music is different today. When the big bands of the 70s, Kiss, Rolling Stones, are gone, there's not going to be any other bands like that again, because today kids don't have a devotion, a passion, a dedication to bands like we did back in the day, because we listen to music differently. We know every minutia of the band because, like Claudio said, we listened to the entire album from top to bottom. And now people are jumping from song to song. What kids know today are basically the hits that the band has. And they may hear a song, it's like, that's a great song. Who sings it? I don't know, and I don't care. And that's the problem, right? So these fans are not generating money for the musicians, in a sense, because they don't buy the physical album, the physical CDs anymore. They stream everything. And it's difficult for bands to make money. Now, Xander, you made a good point a couple of episodes ago when you said that rock stars are not good at making money.
Yeah.
And it's an excellent point, because what rock stars have to do is, like you said, and I agree with you 100%, is go back to basics, just like Kiss did. Do it the same thing, but do it today. You know, start off at small clubs, get your niche of fans, start to build your community and your fan base slowly. Now everybody expects overnight success. You put a video on YouTube, you get 1 million hits, you're a rock star. It doesn't work that way. And even if you become famous that way, you're not making much money that way. It's the idea today of making money from music is too short-sighted. They're not looking at the bigger picture. They're looking at instant gratification and not doing the work that it takes, the years that it will take to become a true rock star or become famous and or make money from your craft.
I can provide just a.
You got to put your faith in a loud guitar, and it's never too late to work 9 to 5. Sorry, go ahead.
There you go. I love it.
Always enough room for a Kiss reference.
Absolutely.
Always.
Yeah, I was gonna say, if I could provide just maybe the slightest pushback against something, Pasquale, you were saying about, younger people today maybe not being as devoted or treating albums the same way. Or bands the same way, they're having that sense of devotion like you maybe did in the 70s or 80s. But I think that does still happen. It's just directed towards solo artists and not bands, because albums are still huge. I think, artists like Taylor Swift, her albums are, she has fans and they know every song. Harry Styles is one of those artists where the albums are important. And then you get into, a lot of rappers like Kendrick Lamar, the albums are essential. It's not always, it's not always the singles or the hits. Or, I mean, of course, that's generally the way it is with pop music, because that's how pop works. But I think that devotion and sense of, taking it all in is more directed not towards bands, but just individual solo artists. And I feel like people have a connection to those kinds of acts, as opposed to like the Beatles, 4 members, Kiss, 4 members, equally important. Queen, where everyone knows every band member's name, or Aerosmith, AC/DC. It's always the Taylor Swift or the Harry Styles or the rapper or this or that. So
yeah.
I
have
that's not rock. So,
I have a weird sidebar, and so we're talking about the devotion to different bands, I've always wondered, is it even healthy to be as devoted to a band as we are to Kiss? Because I talk to most people, most, well,
like,
I mean, seriously, because when I talk to other people, they always say, wow, I've never met someone who likes anything more than you like Kiss. Or, wow, I wish I had something in my life that I loved as much as you love Kiss. And I always say, well, what's your favorite band? And they say, oh, well, I like this. Or they say, well, I really don't have one, or I'm not really a music guy, which is fine. But I've always wondered, it's like Kiss fans, we put all of our eggs in one basket. I mean, I know Claudio, you said you listen to other music than just rock. I listen to other music than just rock. But it seems like we really do, you know, we really like go in on what we like and what we, you know, are passionate about. I mean, we mentioned Taylor Swift fans. My wife's a huge fan, and she's telling me all the time about how the fans are like going through lyric books and they're pulling out all these different codes that she's laid out in the lyrics and these different things. And I'm like, wow, that's, you know, that's Kiss fans. We don't have any sort of like, you know, thing to do like that. But I wonder, I'm like, is this even healthy? Because we do get so obsessive. And so I meet people and I'm like, wow, okay, maybe it's okay to be casual about your music. Maybe it's okay to not be as devoted, but without that devotion, yeah, like you said, you don't, you know, create that focus, and you don't create that almost like that marriage between the fan and the band. I'm not sure where I'm going with this. That was just really an observation, but
I get it though. It's because it's that devotion that generates money for the band.
I was going to say, look behind Claudio. I mean, how much money? Look behind me. You, all of us.
Yeah.
I mean,
You should see my room. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
crazy. But
Yeah.
listen, talking about it being unhealthy, I'm sorry, it's not. Do you know how much I sacrificed for this band? I had to remortgage my condo twice. I'm 54 years old. It should have been paid off 4 years ago, and I pretty much started over again. I was planning on retiring at 60. It's not going to happen. I can't afford it. The number of relationships that I've lost because of the band, it's all worth it.
For sure.
It's all worth it because
Look at Jeb.
because
I love the honesty though.
this band has brought so much passion in my life, so much energy in my life. And I've said it 1,000 times. I wish other people have a similar passion. It doesn't have to be Kiss, but a similar passion, because it will enrich your life. But if you want something bad enough, yeah, there are sacrifices to be made. And I understand that. And it's absolutely worth it.
Yeah, I think, you know, as far as whether it's healthy or not, I mean, the same can be applied to anything that you like.
Yeah.
Because everything's healthy until it's not. If you like to golf, you know, it starts out as a nice hobby, that consumes other people's lives. You know, if you're spending all of your time golfing or
all your money,
it just, you know, it depends on, you know, if it starts to creep into other areas of your life where it becomes a problem. Yeah. But ultimately it's up to you. And if it comes down to your happiness. And so, I mean, it's perfectly healthy for me because I take in all that I want, I feel that I need. And that's, you know, I'm sure that's the same for all of you. Yeah. Because I just recently got a Kiss tattoo over here, and some people don't. You probably can't see it very well, but that's something that people are like, wow, you like Kiss that much. I'm like, oh, yeah. Yes, I do. Right. To say, you know, it's there you go.
Absolutely, it's in my skin. What are you gonna do?
Yeah.
So okay, but do you think, will there ever be another Kiss? Will there ever be anything else to be devoted like this? Because Kiss is much more. We can all agree that Kiss is much more than just music. Yes, they're a great band. Yes, they're great at what they do and what they play, but it's much more than that. And it seems like music nowadays is more about the experience than it is the actual music. When you go see Kiss, I mean, yeah, they're still playing music, but you're getting more of a show than you are anything. And it's like that with most bands, you know, most artists, where it's mostly about the show, the experience. If a band releases an album, there has to be all this extra stuff with it just to get fans, you know, to get their money. And so when I think about the future, I'm like, well, how are other bands, future bands, going to be able to operate if they're just trying to be a band? Not everybody can wear makeup, high heels. Not everybody can. I mean, Slipknot is a great example, where I go to see a Slipknot show, and that's like seeing a Kiss show in the modern day. If Kiss, Slipknot is today what Kiss was in the 70s.
Well, there's also Ghost. There's Rammstein. There's
A
a
huge
lot of
fan of
bands who
Rammstein,
put
yeah.
up a show. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, is it mandatory for bands to have to go this extra length, or will it? I guess we won't be able to tell until it happens. But I mean, I'm just thinking, like, as far as the future of rock goes, Steel Panther, they do the 80s thing, but it's all a gimmick. I love them. I think they're great. What they're doing is, I mean, they're making great music, but it's much more of a gimmick that's, referring back to a previous era. Can a band today sound like the 80s without having to look that part and play that part? I don't know. When you think about Greta Van Fleet, same thing. They get compared to Zeppelin from the 70s. Can a band just make rock music without being compared to another era? I don't know. I wonder about the future of rock, traditional rock, I guess, which is your guitar, drum, bass, and vocals, and your 4-piece rock band.
I think the question can be, grouped, and if I could say in one sentence, would be, how would a new band break through given all that we have?
Yeah.
How does a band achieve something like that, or do something interesting enough to actually get people to pay attention to them? Because we've already had Kiss, we've already had Rammstein and all this. So I think it might take sort of a regression. I know I'm answering instead of you guys, but I feel like it might take more of a regression, sort of like the 90s did after the 80s, when everything got so blown out of proportion. They had music forced itself to take a step back and say, okay, we're doing the complete opposite. I feel like, I don't know what that would look like in the modern day, but what do you have any thoughts about that?
Well, it's that's interesting, because it has so many angles. This question, and the thing is that in this conversation, the four of us, we all have a baseline. Okay, we all have a reference point in time, so we have the tendency to compare everything against the 70s or the 80s, because that's basically the music that we grew up with. Okay, and the same thing happens with other people. So for us, the definition of rock, it's those bands, Kiss, Zepp, AC/DC. It could be interesting to get to know the answer of a 20-year-old kid, to see what is the reference for him. And because if you talk to a 70 years old guy, he's going to say that the reference was the 60s, or maybe Elvis or the Beatles, right? Mm-hmm. So then if you talk about Kiss, and then you compare Kiss versus the Beatles, it's going to, well, Kiss is crap, So there's no rock, there's no music, there's no composition there, blah, blah, blah. So we got to be careful on what do we take as a point of reference. In this case, which is great because this is our conversation, and I guess, most of the audience, they're going to share what we say. We have a tendency to compare against the 70s. And for us, that's rock. Okay. Now, if I may, I would like to come back to the previous question where, we were talking about Gene, if I may.
Yep.
And I think that Gene, I agree with Pask. He believes what he says, and he falls in the same trap. He's comparing versus, how he grew up with in terms of rock business. So record companies used to be side by side with the bands. They were supporting the bands all the time, trying to make money out of the albums, okay? And the live shows, it came with it, okay? It was like a combo. Now, when Gene is saying rock is dead, and he always mentions Sophie, that she makes great music and she doesn't make any money out of that. So you can tell exactly why Gene is, saying what he's saying. Yeah. And now record companies, they're not giving big contracts to rock artists. That is true, okay? There's no money, there's no big money invested in music. What are the record companies doing? And I'm gonna take a discussion with Andy, a close friend of us, with Pask, and he was saying, he made a good point. He said, look, the record companies are making deals for digital distribution of music, okay, with Spotify, whoever, and that money is not going to the artist, okay? So basically, the record companies kind of were were or are still against the artist, because that money in the past used to go to the rock musicians. They were making the money, they were selling the records, and they were getting the royalties. Now it's not happening anymore, and I think that's why Gene is saying that rock is dead. I don't think that Gene ever thought about the attitude and what we discussed in the first part of the episode, but more business, kind of thing. So the minute you're gonna put your hand in Gene's pocket, look, he's gonna say, whatever is gonna shake the tree, as I said before, it's gonna say rock is dead, but it's not. To me, it's not.
For sure. So, Pasquale, let's talk more about what we were talking about earlier, as far as what we're talking about. Bands. Will there be more bands like Kiss?
Yeah.
Okay, that's an interesting question, because the question of is rock is dead and are there going to be bands like Kiss are two different questions. Because my answer to that question is no. I don't believe for a second there's going to be a band like Kiss or bands like Kiss, Rolling Stones or whatever, because the way kids today consume music is different. But just because there won't be bands like Kiss, it doesn't mean that rock is dead. The way we consume rock is different. I think it's as simple as that.
For sure. I would like to see, I think I mentioned this in a previous episode, where I would like to see more rock scenes come back, where it seems like people nowadays are really, and social media is a great tool, the internet is a great tool, a great resource, but it seems like everybody's determination, everybody's focus is getting 1 million views, getting 1 million followers, becoming viral, becoming an overnight sensation, instead of longevity, as opposed to now, let's think about later. And so I'm hoping that there will be a generation of, whether it's rock or not, but just artists and, hopefully rock, that will focus more on, getting out, playing for their communities and rallying their friends and their city, their communities, their schools together, as opposed to trying to, get a like or a comment from someone halfway across the world that maybe listen to the full song, that maybe is a bot, who knows. I just feel like everybody is so pressured to have the next single, the next hit, the next viral song on TikTok, that we kind of forget that.
It's in a weird way, that's a great point. It just popped something into my mind, because being how isolated we are on social media and all that stuff, I think that community aspect of it needs to be sort of brought back, because it takes people, and particularly groups of people, to rock. And I feel like there's less groups of people hanging out in real life anyway, so maybe that also contributes. But I don't know, that's just a thought that I had.
No, for sure.
I also want to push back on what Jeb was saying earlier about the Taylor Swifts in the world, that you have fans that are really devoted to them and their music. I agree with that, sort of. I just find a lot of today's music is compared to bubblegum. It's bubblegum music, right? It's the flavor of the day, and then it's gone. And I'm sorry, especially kids today, there's no longevity. The kids are into something now, and tomorrow they're into something else. The idea that a band could last 50 years like Kiss is going to be unheard of today.
Yeah.
Taylor Swift is going to be one of those artists, though.
I think she will be too. She's been around for a while already.
Because what she was once considered bubblegum, I think plenty of people still do, but she, at least in 2022, is, I think, proven herself to be a proper songwriter.
Yeah.
By the way, I'm not like huge into her music, but I totally acknowledge that she, to me, is not an overnight. Since, I mean, she has come into her own so much just over the past handful of years, that, and maybe, she's one out of like 1 million, so she's special, maybe a Harry Styles will end up, doing something like that. But I think her, in her case specifically, she will be remembered for some time.
There are very few artists I've noticed that actually write their own music and write their own songs. Because if you start looking at songwriting credits, the artist is nowhere on there. Right. And Taylor Swift is one of the only few artists I can find that actually does like write her own songs. And even now, she's going back and re-recording her entire catalog, because there was some discrepancy with, I don't know if it was her label, her management, or whatever. But it came to the point where she bought all the rights to her music and is now going back, re-recording all of her albums and re-releasing so that her fans can listen and support her music. and her songs and no longer deal with the corporate entities. And so I wonder if music as a whole will steer more away from corporate, more away from labels who are no longer on the same side as bands, who are no longer taking care of their artists. I see a lot more independent artists nowadays, and that's a lot harder to do since you're obviously independent and on your own. But I wonder if, barring a few people like Taylor Swift and the Beyoncés and the Rihannas who are A-list stars, you know, I mean, who knows? I don't know.
Well, a couple of years ago, 2 or 3 years ago, or even more, there was a big movement of indie bands who were doing exactly that, right? So Interpol, you know, and that there are so many that that's right. That's what they wanted to do. They wanted to get away from corporate. You know, they didn't want record companies to dictate their destiny, and they were very successful. They had a big following. Some of them, you know, they're not around anymore, but they were doing what they wanted to do. So basically, they kind of created their own rock business.
Yeah, I think, the other day I was watching an interview with Steve Vai, of course, the virtuoso guitar player, and he was asked to give advice for young musicians today, and it kind of ties into what you were just saying. He said, get the rights to your own publishing, and that will change everything. I feel like, you know, owning your own music and all that stuff, I think that is a huge game changer. So
I think we can all agree, because we've mostly been talking about the rock business as opposed to just rock music. We've been talking about albums versus singles versus streaming versus physical versus, you know, this and that. It seems like the business has really gotten in the way of music and just artists being able to create music. There's always somebody, you know, over your shoulder trying to take, you know, your money, or, you know, trying to get what's there or what they think is theirs. And it seems like the business has, you know, and of course, Gene will tell you the music is just one part. It's always the music business. And it seems like the business, the model, whether it's the fans' fault or it's the artist's fault or who cares, there's a problem. And so I'm curious to see what the new formula will be, because in our last episode, we talked about, or in episode 26, we were talking about new artists and new bands that are coming out. And I mentioned a group called The Warning, which is a group of sisters from Mexico who are fantastic. Their new album just came out a few days ago. It's called Error, and I highly recommend it if you want to hear some good rock and some new rock and you want to support new artists. But I wanted to go support them, and I couldn't even find a download link for their album. I couldn't even find a link to purchase their album. Their album is streaming only. And that to me really bothered me, because I think there's more of us than we like to admit, but there are young people who still do want to buy physical music and physical copies. But it seems like the majority of people are just wanting streaming and online only, because their album Error is only on Spotify and streaming services. You can't even download MP3s off Amazon, which is bizarre, because 5 years ago, if a band put out an album and you didn't have a car that had a CD player anymore, you could at least just download or buy the MP3 files and have the album there, maybe put it on your digital library. With this new album by this new band, you can't do that. And so
there you go. That makes Gene's statement, you know, all the way through. So you see a young band. Actually, they played here in Montreal like 3 weeks ago, and they are fantastic. So they are on the radio, you know, 2 or 3 times a day, and now they have their hands tied, you know, with the business. As you said, you know, you want to buy their album and you can't, so he has to go through the streaming platform. So yeah, it's interesting. Well, I wish I had the answer for this, but I don't know where this is going really. I don't know how artists can get back control of their rights and music. I don't know. The lifespan of bands and musicians is not that long as before. So that's why maybe these guys, they want to get, you know, the best out of a hit or two and make some money and then move to something else. I don't know. It's different. It's different.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I'm not really sure where it's going to go either, but I think it's interesting that, you know, it really bothered me, because I wanted to buy that album and not even see it. I wonder if that was their label's, because I think they are backed by a label. And I wonder if that was the label's choice. And you know what, you're not even worth putting the, you know, the rock music, we're not even going to waste the time and money to make physical copies and sell them and distribute them and all that. We'll just put it on Spotify. Whoever likes it. But it just, I don't know. I hope that does not become a trend, because I've even seen other pop artists like Olivia Rodrigo, who, you know, became an overnight sensation or whatever. She released her first album, Sour, and you could find it on vinyl. You could find it on cassette. I'm like, what 18-year-old girl is listening to cassettes? I don't know, but I found it very odd that that was put on. And you can find other rap artists and other artists whose music is being released on cassettes, but you can't find a rock album on CD. And so to me, there's just, I don't know. Like I said, to me, that really bothered me. Pasquale, did you have something to say?
Yeah, I was just about to say that, you know, a lot of bands are going more independent today. What is it, that website, Bandcamp? That people put their CDs and albums on that site, and that's where you can purchase it. I bought an album from Shameless. They redid a Gene Simmons demo song.
Okay.
I'm still waiting for the album to come.
That was really good, by the way. That
yeah,
they
amazing.
had Kulik on that song. I can't remember what it was called, but it was really cool.
Yeah, but their other songs are good as well. And I purchased the album. If it was just down streaming, honestly, I wouldn't listen to it, because I want the physical copy. I want the artwork. Beth Page and the Disasters, they were on the Kiss cruise. I bought her album as well. Fantastic from top to bottom. You want a rock album? There you got a rock album. Incredible.
Perfect.
You know, but that's how I got the album, directly through her. And she's self-promoting. She's pushing her music. She's pushing her album. She's creating that community. And she has a strong fan base. And she has that fan base because she's the one creating it. Not some company, not some corporation, but her and her band. And I think that's the future of rock music today.
I like that. I hope so. And I think that is the best way to do it, because we've all agreed that, you know, the business is, there's always, you know, guys in suits that are trying to, you know, meddle their way in. And so I really hope that is the future of music or rock and roll, where it's artists, you know, taking care of themselves, rather than trying to dream of a 5-album record deal, or rather than trying to dream of that contract, you know, it's like, no, why don't we do our band? And then we have our other friend over here who's, you know, maybe trying to get into management, and, you know, maybe can make things happen on the computer as far as creating events. It's almost like it's going to have to become just yourself. You know, bands like Kiss, you know, I mean, yes, they had guys like Neil and Bill, but it was them who were, you know, carrying their instruments in their loft rehearsing. It was them going into stores and putting their costumes together, and, oh, why don't we look like this, and why don't we do that? I hope to see more of that come back, because it's almost like art. I mean, you are creating art. Music is art. Performing is art. And so I want to see the art come back as opposed to the business. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think it's coming back. I think it's definitely coming back, you know, and if I may add, you know, there's another example of a Canadian band that it's called The Damn Truth. Fantastic band, you know, four members, you know, guitar, bass, female singer, and drums. And this is exactly what they do. So they've been in business. They've been struggling, trying to position themselves for the last 10 years. And persistence, you know, they kept going, and they have a following now, and that's what they do. So you see the guys, you know, selling, you know, their CDs at the end of the show. They sign it for you. They take care of their instruments, and they just came back from a tour in Europe, and that's where we're going. And that's why I said, you know, to me, there's a comeback, and there's hope that you know, rock bands will still be around, and that's going to allow us to keep enjoying this beautiful music, you know.
Absolutely.
But,
that's great. I think that's a very positive way to sort of wrap this up. So does anybody have any other points they want to add? I want to throw in. I've pretty much, you know, talked about what I need to talk about. Jeb, do you have anything that you wanted to add in?
The only thing I would add, just to wrap things up, is I think, you know, something I wish Gene would have said instead of rock, or, you know, rock is dead. He could have said it in a much better way, such as, well, rock is different, because that actually makes sense. It's actually true. It's very obviously true. And the concept of rock being dead is just, it's kind of, I reject the whole question outright. But so I like everyone's answers and their perspectives, but I think we can all agree that rock is just different, but very much alive. The way we consume it is different.
It is.
But for
indeed.
each one of us, I mean, it's certainly alive within us. I mean, we're doing a podcast about rock in 2022, and I think it's a great thing. So
yeah,
that's it.
You know, it is true that, you know, hip hop and pop, they are basically dominating, you know, the market these days. But rock is definitely coming back, and there are some very interesting bands that came out, you know, lately. You know, if you can check out, you know, Inhaler, that's a great band. You know, The Warning, also Dirty Honey from Los Angeles, you know, great band. And well, you don't have to forget, they are not new, but Greta Van Fleet. Look, you know, that's you can say whatever you want about, you know, being kind of trying to copy, you know, Zeppelin, but they created their own style now. And I remember what you guys mentioned, you know, in episode 26. Now you cannot compare them to Zeppelin. You know, they created their own following, and they're touring, and they're putting out albums. So look, it's alive. It's alive.
Yeah, we like Greta Van Fleet in this house.
I personally want to thank Gene Simmons for making that comment, because what he did was rally the fans around rock and roll to defend it. And right there, you know that you have all these people defending rock and roll. It's not going to die.
That's right.
Exactly.
Amen.
As long as we're alive, as long as we're all alive, rock.
There you go. There you
That's
go.
a great way to end it. Well, I'll tell you what, guys, we'll wrap it up right here. Thank you guys so much for joining us. Actually, really quick, one thing I want to say to the people out there, if you're watching Kiss Army Things podcast, you need to be watching the Kiss Army Nation podcast. You can find them on YouTube. You can find them on Facebook. You can find them on Instagram. Where else? Spotify.
Yep.
Everywhere, anywhere you can hear audio podcasts, we're there.
There you go. Spreaker, I'm assuming. Yeah.
No, not yet.
Not yet.
That one.
Ooh,
coming up
soon.
Yeah,
TBD for sure. Well, there you go. Yeah, I mean, I love you guys' podcast. I think it's great. I was talking because we've both had Rob on our podcast recently, and the Carusos. I was telling Rob at the meet and greet, us new podcast, we got to stick together.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
we're all the newer ones in town, so we all got to link up and stay together. But thank you guys so much for joining us, talking about Rock is Dead, talking about Kiss. We will definitely have you guys back on for another topic in the future. Thank you guys so much for joining us. And to you, the Kiss Army watching, please follow Kiss Army Things on Facebook. We're on Instagram. We're on YouTube. Definitely subscribe, like this video if you want to see more, and be sure to follow the Kiss Army Nation as well. Thank you for joining us on episode 28 of the Kiss Army Things podcast. My name is Xander.
My name's Jed.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Guys, thank you.